computer. Yes. There we go. So I am here with the lovely Andreas, whom I have met through a therapeutic Facebook group in the Jehovah's Witness community. And come to find out, we were both living in Stockholm, Sweden, and I told him we needed to meet. And just like Joachim, if you guys want to interview, I just hit it off with Andreas, and we just instantly became really good friends, and a friend I hope to keep in my life for many, many years. Yeah. It's just been really, really fulfilling to have somebody that you can just talk to about different things, with working with people, with the community of the Jehovah's Witnesses and the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and just somebody amazing energy to talk to. So he has such a phenomenal story, and I think this is just such a great opportunity to share. And Andreas, I would love for you to get started. Tell me a little bit about your background, your upbringing.
Thank you, Vivian. Yeah, I was born in to the Jehovah's Witness community. My mum had stopped being a pioneer when she got my brother, and then my dad stopped when I was born, and they had also been special pioneers before I was born, and dad was an elder, of course. And one thing that was kind of peculiar, I would say, was that mom and dad, both of them, confessed to be of the anointed. Which is really, I would even say, unheard of. I haven't met anyone where, like, maybe one was an anointed, or maybe even like an old sister, or someone without children or something like that. But that kind of a couple both confessed to be of the anointed. I haven't heard of anyone that's like that. Yeah. So, yeah. In terms of how that was like for me growing up, I could never say, because that was kind of the natural for me. It was never anything that we kind of discussed, because they were just mom and dad. I know that they didn't like to have any special light shown upon them. Sometimes somebody would ask how it was like to be anointed, and but they didn't want any special attention or anything like that. I've also tried to understand, like, how is it possible to become an anointed? Which is a huge question, and I've seen comments online like, well, those that confess to be of the anointed, they must be crazy people, delusional or something like that. But in that case, obviously, you need to think that the entire Christian faith is delusional and crazy. And although they are nuts in all communities, I don't think you can say that kind of just straight off the bat, right? So I will tell you a bit about how they became anointed, although I am mindful that I don't want to, out their story. And then I will also tell you my thoughts about that. So it was actually in 1973 to 75, somewhere around that my mom and dad, they were living in Finland at the time as special pioneers, and they were hanging out with a sister that was of the anointed. And in my mind now, when I've thought about that kind of maybe open up the opportunity. So all right, so there's someone of the anointed, and they had a close bond. They could talk to her about that, how it was like for her to be of the anointed. And then when dad was reading the Bible, he started looking at scriptures and say, oh, this really applies to me. And after a while, he spoke also to my mum. And at that point, she was kind of panicked because of her wounds. She had a deep abandonment wound, I would say, with all due respect, from her childhood. And losing dad was, she was crying so much when she heard that he was of the anointed. And she was in this space, and then she felt the calling herself as well. And the best way I can describe that today, how I think, what I think about that, I can take an example. Maybe you've seen the TED talk with Brene Brown, right? It's probably the most listened to TED talk ever. Mm-hmm. And it's about vulnerability. And I listened to it back in 2012. And I found it really fascinating, but also mind-boggling and a bit, just, whoa, what is this? And in there, she says kind of that we are worthy of love and belonging. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. But it was more in my head. But then when I had done kind of the internal work, now if you would say to me, you are worthy of love and belonging, I just feel, oh, yes, that applies to me. I am worthy of love and belonging, unconditional love, because I'm a good person. And also just because I'm a human being, just because I'm alive. So that's how I look at that, because like in the Old Testament, you would have what we call, maybe in the alternative community, you would say the 3D world. So it was much about, the Israelites having a country that as a theocracy, and it was a lot of wars and to defend that country on earth. Whereas in the New Testament, it is kind of what we call the 5D world, and which is about recognizing that our true being is not confined to just our bodies. And I would also say that when I've done the trauma work, that sometimes when you have really early trauma that my dad had in his childhood, he had illnesses and abandonment as well from an early age, then that causes you not to be in your body and to be maybe in the spiritual more. So I would say that kind of that's how I interpret their calling, that they obviously we have something greater than just our bodies, and we are not meant just to be on this earth for 70 or 80 years. There's something greater in us, and that's what I felt probably.
It's so interesting that you say that, and it's something that is definitely not thought about in the religion by any means, because they're not telling you to look within for anything. You're not taught to feel your emotions. You're not taught to think for yourself. You're just supposed to read the Bible, read the publications, go along with everything. And if you have questions, you need to study more. You need to ask maybe the elders. You need to pray about it. It was never about, what do I actually think? How am I feeling during this situation or this topic? Then you're wrong. Then you're questioning yourself. So yeah, I definitely, it's very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that story about how your parents became and got insight of them being of the anointed. That's a very interesting story, and the sense of your mom kind of having that sense of abandonment, as you said, and just a sense of, oh, I'm gonna lose the person that I've had with me, so I kind of need to follow. And just being compassionate with that part of her, it's just something that's very important. And so at what age were you then baptized?
I was baptized at age 11.
Okay, that's fairly young.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
remember the process what I had. It was purely a thought process,
Mm.
because my brother had been baptized the year before, and then it just struck me like an idea. Hey, he has become baptized. Maybe I could become baptized as well. And then I was actually lying in a caravan at the time. We were camping a bit. I think it was out on the street just outside the house, but to just have a cozy night, something like that. And I was like, okay, so this is true, and this is true, and this is true. And I laid the JW puzzle that you talk about. And it's like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. I'll do it. But I never ever even considered, is this actually something that I want? I just assume that this is something I want because that's I've been told that I want this, right?
Absolutely.
And all kids want to make their parents happy. So
Absolutely.
in my world there was no option, no alternative. So basically, the goal is for you to become a pioneer. And my mom and dad, they were very clear. Our goal is for everyone to be pioneers when Armageddon breaks out.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
And then how do you feel about that? Well, it's not about how you feel about that. It's about aligning your feelings with this goal, bending them to fit this goal.
Mm. So not even asked,
So
do you feel like this is a goal for you? It needs to be a goal, and
no,
then your emotions need to,
yeah,
even your emotions, your life, your schooling needs to
yeah.
fit that role. So as you were going into your teenage years, were you in going into your young adult life, what was that situation like? And did you feel pressure to become a servant?
Oh, this is kind of hard for me to go back into those years. Oh, I felt so much pressure, so much pressure. Growing up, I really felt like a big failure. I felt like such a big failure. And I also believe that that kind of the pragmatic way of life that my mom and dad had told me, sort of do good things and you will become happy in the future, almost like the same as you can pause your life for now in the paradise. You will become happy and good and everything is just splendid. And so when I was in my teenage years, obviously becoming a servant, finish my schooling, and becoming a pioneer, and getting married. Those were my goals, and it was like working towards those goals, working towards those goals. Constantly. I would call it today a survival strategy.
Mm.
I was not in line with my heart at all. It was just about fighting to get to those goals. And I had to believe that once I get there, he will make me fulfilled.
So at what age were you married?
Well, I became a servant at age 19. And just to give you a hint of my mindset, actually at that time, I thought I should have become a servant at, was it 20 that I became a servant? Yes, I became a servant at 20. Yeah. And I thought 19 is the limit. So I was kind of disappointed because I felt like I should have become a servant at 19 because I did all the right things,
It's a
which
lot of
is
pressure.
kind of a lot of pressure, and also the judgmental attitude and always comparing yourself to everyone else and
Mm.
making sure that I was exemplary because that was so important, right?
And your brother, he's how much older than you?
2 years older than me.
So is he
And he
already a
was always
servant?
the good. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he was the good brother. He was pioneering all through, already through his training, to, the schooling, like high school and stuff like that.
So you were a
So
servant at 20 and he was already at
yeah,
22. He was a servant for several years at this point already.
yeah. And then he also moved to Bethel and became an elder
You
eventually, and went to the foreign field. So he
okay.
served in China for a few years.
Wow.
But
Okay.
going back to my story, I
Yeah.
became a servant at age 20. And then at age 21, I finished my schooling, my training to be an osteopath. And then at age 22, I got married. And then I just crashed because I realized that I had too much anxiety. It was too much pressure to even consider becoming a pioneer.
Mm.
Just going out in service, it was so much pressure and so much anxiety. I basically curled up in a fetal position. I couldn't move. And also because all of my dreams were shattered. But achieving those goals didn't give me happiness. I was the same person. So that was a big crisis for me.
Mm. Wow. So you were married, you just finished school, and you just felt really empty, and you were newlywed. So how did your wife take that?
The first year was really tough for her from a relational standpoint. I didn't know anything about that. I just gonna focus on becoming right in my head,
Mhm.
trying to understand myself. And I went to see someone at the time, and she actually used the kind of the Christian card on me, and she said, "Well, Jesus said that you should love your neighbor as yourself. That got to mean that you've got to love yourself." And I was like, I don't know about that. I I'm pretty sure that you should love Jehovah God more than yourself. And then if you become happy, okay, that's a good product. But and also you are a false Christian, right? You're not even the correct kind of Christian. So you have interpreted this scripture wrong. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So how often or how long did you see her for? I take it not that long.
Well, I wasn't very receptive. Let's put it that
So then how much longer did you actually take this break for? I mean, were you going to the meetings at the time when you hit the wall or you had this burnout?
yeah. I mean, I had this burnout, and I continue going in service, and I continue going to the meetings, giving that up. That was scared the living out of me, So
Of course. Yeah, of course. Of
yeah,
course. So you continued on and then
yeah.
you were, how old were you when you had your daughter?
Oh, I was I was uh, I was becoming 31 that year. I was 30 years old.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it had been,
yeah.
because how old were you again when you got married?
22.
Okay. So almost 10 years later, 9 years later.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so during that time, we also moved to a foreign language congregation. Actually, foreign language means English, but it was in Sweden, so it was a foreign language congregation, wasn't it? So, and
Yeah.
we stayed there for a while. And I had to be taken off the being a servant, and then I became a servant again later on, and stuff like that. But um, I realized during this time that I don't know, this is not for me. I got to build myself a base. So basically, when I was 29 or something like that, I broke with my mom and dad in the way that I actually got myself my own home and renovated that.
So you were
And
living with them.
no, I had a flat. The stay small. I hated living in that flat. I absolutely hated it. But I was supposed to keep my life simple.
Mhm.
So then I moved to this renovation project, so to speak, and started renovating that. And then we had our girl. And then it turned out that she had special needs. And uh, that was really hard for me and really hard for my wife as well. I think that probably the first year we were totally in shock. I was so shut off. I was like, what do I feel? Is this someone in the congregation said they had complications when their triplets were born, and they said to me, well, we had it much easier than you are having right now. And I was like, whoa, is it? I was so lost. I can't begin to tell you how lost I was.
Wow.
And it felt like also the doctors, they are well, it is like you think that you know what it's like to become a father or a mother, right? And it's just something that you store in the back of your head. You see thousands of parent children relationships all through life, and you think, okay, I've got a pretty good idea of what it's like to be a father or a mother, and that all of that is just shattered, and then it's like tubes and medical examinations, and then since we didn't have anything to compare with, we just looked at her, and she had like loads of epileptic seizures all the time, and having that kind of the bond with the eyes, nothing worked like we thought they would.
Wow.
So it was such a hard time, and I am so happy that I had that family, the one with the triplets. He was very empathetic, and she as well. And basically, they became like mediators between us and the congregation, because the congregation were like, we don't really know how to handle this. And I haven't had many panic attacks through my life, but I had one of the greatest panic attacks that I had was being taken in by the elders. And basically they asked me, so there was this brother, he was constantly feeling guilty about everything. And then he was like, I looked at your residence card and it's been half a year since you got your daughter, and I realized you haven't reached your limit as a servant of 10 hours. And it was kind of, he was blaming himself that he hadn't done his kind of work to look after me, to look after my numbers, not the he cared, of course he cared, but it was mainly that he didn't live up to his role as the group overseer, And before that, I said to them, all right. So when you called me, guys, I will just let you know that when you called me, I almost had a panic attack. All right. So please be gentle, please. And they said, yeah. Okay. So what we were going to discuss today was,
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. And that ate away on me, and I was like, I have always thought that the elders should be, like Christ Jesus. They shouldn't break a reed. The prophecy about Jesus. That glow. They shouldn't extinguish a glow in someone. I always thought that they should be shepherds taking care of us. Maybe that they don't want what is good for me. Obviously, they don't understand anything what I'm going through. So I brought it up with the presiding overseer, it was called at the time, and he actually took it to the elders, and there was a shift in the way of treating us. And through that time onward, when we were in the hospital, people would bring us food and they would take care of us. And I think that the entire congregation kind of grew from this experience with more compassion and less by the book standards, like less being robots or company men or women, and more doing it with heart.
So here you are, these kids in their early 30s, having a kid for the first time with no handbook given to them. You had this child that was not only not receptive to eye contact, but not receptive to all other kinds of interactions. You guys did not really. How old was she when you were given a diagnosis?
As a matter of fact, we were never ever given a diagnosis. She was one of those cases that I couldn't really tell what was going on. Yeah.
What was the situation like? You guys were at the hospital. Was there a time where you guys were just home all the time? Like, at what point were you just, the doctors are like, we're done testing her and now it's time for you guys just to raise her?
Yeah. Well, I think we were in hospital initially for 5 weeks, and then we were allowed to go out in the world, and we were so scared. Like, I guess all parents can relate to, like, where's the handbook? Oh, how do I do this? And when they usually leave the hospital, I think that all parents feel like that when they have their first child.
Yeah, but like a million times more in your situation.
Yeah, because we they would measure her saturation on a monitor all the time, and they would have these safety proceedings all the time. And we were like, okay, so she could stop breathing during night, right? And we were giving the prognosis that, well, some of these kids, they don't live to their, toddler phase or something like that. And some of them, they become adults. So we didn't really know how to handle that.
Wow.
But we came out in the real world, so to speak.
Wow. And during testing, was your wife given any kind of diagnosis about your daughter? By the way, can we mention her name? What was her name?
I'd rather not mention her name.
Okay,
I mean,
sure. No, I'm talking about your daughter.
Oh, my daughter. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
She was Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. So when your ex-wife was pregnant with Elizabeth, the
No
doctors didn't say anything.
No.
Okay.
No clue.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah.
And how was your wife's pregnancy? Fine, normal.
I would say uneventful, but no pregnancy is uneventful. But
yeah, exactly.
You go through we had training, breathing, how to breathe properly, and how to prepare ourselves and stuff like that. And she was afraid of giving birth, like,
of course,
I guess
all stuff, I would say.
Yeah.
So then you got sent home from the hospital. Did you feel the pressure then to have to go back to the meetings right away? And what was the congregation like? You said they became more compassionate.
Well, I will tell you kind of how both she and I was probably very kind of indoctrinated in what you should do. So we had the training of how to become parents. And the very same day that we left the hospital, there would be this kind of the meetup where you would meet the new parents in this group. And we were like, all right, so let's go to that place. and then we came there and was like, whoa, also there are normal babies here and normal pregnancies, and we were so unprepared. So skipping meetings, oh my God, that would never occur to us that you could ever skip a meeting, unless you're ill. So, but it was a tough time for us, and I was during that time I was so angry with her. We had totally different styles of dealing with the trauma. She let her anger out on the hospital staff and stuff like that, things they did. And I was like, that's not the thing. We have a sick daughter, you know.
Yeah.
And so basically we couldn't really communicate about that. And then we kind of found our roles, because I the home was a mess as well, because we hadn't finished the renovation, and basically our lives just fell apart, and we were living in the end like four adults and one daughter, together with my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and also a caretaker for a girl. We were living in 60 square meter apartment. During quite a long time, actually, before I could finish the home and stuff like that.
Wow.
So we continued on, and it was just about living through the day and trying to get our lives together. And we also went to Canada for a month to give our daughter special treatment with an alternative method, like a Feldenkrais method. I don't know if you know anything about Feldenkrais. It's a special way of communicating with the body through natural movements. How the children are supposed to sort of learn how to walk and stuff like that, and that regulates the nervous system. And we lived with a family, one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I felt so unworthy, because I was having doubts, and I was like, I'm not worthy of staying with this witness family for a month. They are letting out their basement for us. They basically gave up the bedroom for us, so we can stay there. And I'm so unworthy, because I don't even know if I believe that this is the truth. But we got to do it for my daughter, and just run away.
How old
from
was
that.
she at that point?
2 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were sleeping in the basement at a family in Canada's, going to treatment for 1 month for your daughter, and with the intention that she might have some kind of feedback. And was that successful?
Looking back, I think that was her best, probably, because she was more awake. She could connect more. She was more free in the body. She could never sit up straight, but we were able to handle her much better. She wasn't like just falling. She didn't have any muscle tone, basically. So we still had to support her head, because otherwise she just probably break a neck or something like that. So it was like having a baby that never grew up, but she was better off. She was happier at that time, but it was unsustainable to go to Canada for treatments in the long term. So we couldn't do it again.
Okay. So you went home with kind of in a little bit of a better position. What was your mentality as you were going home? You were questioning the religion. You were kind of distant from your wife. You weren't feeling worthy of staying with this family in Canada. So now you go home, your daughter's 2 years old. What was the situation like?
Well, already at that time, I think we found our roles as parents more, and we could communicate and we could work as a team more, and so that improved a bit. But then there were so many medical issues all the time, going to the hospital, and basically, as I said, it was just a massive survival strategy. Just be looking at the schedule, like, all right, so we got to do this and 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 that through the week. And how on earth am I going to survive? All right, so just take one step at a time and not feel anything. And I was also going through a to a therapist at the time, and it opened up, a few things inside of me, and I'm very grateful to him. I did that for 4 years, but then eventually in 2017, she became depressed in the beginning of 2017, and we didn't know it at the time, but in February 5 years ago, she actually passed away. And it was such a surreal experience. They was doing CPR on her, and that would probably stay forever in my mind, because basically they are hurting her, right? You break ribs, and they were trying to get like a needle into her neck and stuff like that, and my instinct was just to pick her up and run away, but obviously that I knew that was impossible. And then she passed away, and the very next day, both me and my wife realized, hey, we are free. So we were laughing, and we were having a good time. We were laughing and then crying, and laughing and crying, and we were able to support each other in the grieving process. Yeah.
Did your daughter die in her sleep?
No, she died of sepsis, probably.
And can you explain what that is?
And that means that you have an infection in your bloodstream, basically.
Okay, got it.
So basically, you die from a shock of the cardiovascular system.
Wow.
Because the body is just panicking, and then it just shuts off.
Wow. Yeah. So this happened, and then you guys went into this, so many different moods, so many different emotions that was coming out for you guys.
Yeah.
It was 2017, February of 2017.
Yeah. And I started dreaming of, buying a van, escaping my life of, confinement, and swimming with dolphins, doing the things that would fill my heart. Whereas she dreamt about having that family that she always wanted for herself. So that kind of split us apart, because I knew that I had to leave. For several years, I had said to myself that on the regional convention, all right, so this is the last regional convention I'm going to. And then the next year I would come back and I was like, how did this happen? I'm here. Why did I come? I don't even enjoy this. And I don't even believe this anymore.
Did you share that with her?
I think that she knew. I never shared the full extent to my doubts, but I think she knew them. And basically, the reason why I didn't speak about that, maybe she would differ. Maybe I spoke very much about that. Maybe she knew exactly where I was at. But the thing was that I couldn't she couldn't bear that, because that was not for her. She wanted to stay.
So you wanted to explore these things that were in your heart. And what happened after that?
So in 2018, I realized now, okay, so this is not going anywhere. So I attended my last meeting in September 2018, and then I left. And I had to divorce her as well, because I was actually holding on because I didn't want to hurt her. But then again, we were going in the different directions. It was impossible to. She wanted to have a husband that was as devoted as to the religion as he was, and I couldn't give her that. And having a child with her would bring me to panic, in absolute panic, because I was like, I'm not being tied to her for 20 years, and I'm not raising a child as one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
So that's
and basically, I don't want to speak any bad words about her, because she's a lovely woman, and I think that we loved each other more than we ever did in the end. But the reason why I couldn't be with her was also because she wanted to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
oh wow.
And also, I couldn't open myself up. I mean, I couldn't open up my soul's desires to her, because that wasn't her dreams condition.
No. So at what point did you disassociate yourself through a letter? Did you get disfellowshipped? What was the situation around you leaving?
It was in March 2019 that I dissociated. And a reason for me doing that, I mean, I couldn't bear the thought that someone would say, all right, so are you one of Jehovah's Witnesses? And I was like, well, technically, no. I wanted to cut all ties. I never wanted to be associated with that religion, because it wasn't for me, basically. And the stance on homosexuals and everything.
I completely am right there with you. So after you left the organization and disassociated with yourself, where did getting involved with the ex-Jehovah's Witness Facebook groups in the therapeutic, because you've been working in the therapeutic world since 2004, which is a whole nother story that we'll save for a different time. But
yeah.
How did you get involved with the ex-Jehovah's Witness and Julie's group, the therapeutic group, therapy-based group?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I was reading a book about trauma in general and codependency. And I read like probably like a page this big page on religious trauma. And I was just, whoa, let's not go there. I was so triggered. I was so activated. For 2 days, I couldn't think straight. So it took me actually until the beginning of 2021 before I could associate with the ex-Jehovah's Witness community and really dig deep into that side of my trauma.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then when did you join the Facebook group?
I actually joined, like just a few days after Julie started that group. And then I became a co-admin, and then I and another therapist or practitioner, Jonam, took over that in January now of 2022. Yeah.
Wow, it's so incredible. So how has it been like working in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community as a therapist?
Well, I will tell you one thing. When my daughter died, kind of what I needed to find some purpose in that. So I felt like she was actually setting me free. Her mission, so to speak, was to set me free. And for me to go into my purpose and to really live from a authentic self and give that to people. But I had so many fears that I had to work through. So it's only now that I actually can really start to offer my services to the XJW community for real. And I feel, I feel so thankful for that. Oh, it just fills me with so much. It's so heart opening, and it's just.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's like the universe has finally showed you your path, and you're now ready to step into it. And it's so rewarding, so rewarding.
Yeah.
And I completely understand where you're coming from, and the fact that Joachim, the one is one of the first Jehovah's Witnesses that I met in a very long time, who I actually connected with, who then met you, and then you started this group together. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. Actually, we'll start at the New Year's Eve of 2022, like the day before 2022. And I was like, let's make a vision of 2022. It will consist of this and this and that. And I was like, oh my God, how is this going to happen? Oh. And I was like, yeah, I don't need to create this on my own. Yeah, that's a good idea. Like
we were talking, you and I were talking about that, and I think, and we had a conversation, and I gave you some ideas, but you and Joachim just like hit it off.
We had it off 3 weeks later. We had a group going. I was like,
because Joachim wastes no time. He's on that shit. He doesn't.
Let's put it this way: we complement each other.
Which is fantastic.
I'm still thinking things through, and trying to make it really with a good knowledge base, so to speak. Not saying that he's not, but he's the engine in the relationship for sure. And we find it.
Exactly. Sometimes when you think about something too much, it makes you question yourself, procrastinate even longer. Joachim is the action taker, and you have so much experience behind you working on so many different modalities. So can you talk a little bit about the modalities that you are certified in?
Well, I'm an osteopath. I'm a craniosacral osteopath, and I'm working trauma as a trauma-informed osteopath, basically. And so I explore the different states of being in the body, and then we talk about the experiences, and then I pick up their feelings from the body and I give it back to them in a very, of course, open manner. Maybe it is like this, maybe it is like that. I'm sensing this. Is that true? And then they can move through their trauma. So that's the work that I've been doing for a long time. But then I'm also a breath worker, which is there's a biodynamic breath work and trauma release system. So it's kind of a trauma-informed breath work system that I work with as well. But both of these modalities, you have to do it like one-on-one in person. And then I also took a course with something called NARM, which is the neuroaffective relational model, which is a psychoanalytical tool for dealing with complex trauma. And that is also the modality that I use in the group therapy that we use. And it's such a great tool. I feel
that's fascinating. And me and Joachim are taking the same course, Compassion Inquiry through Governmate, but he's now completed and I'm halfway done with it. So how do you feel with this somatic-based experience method of compassionate inquiry, and Joachim's background with being an addict and being a witness, and your background, how is that combined with the group that you're coaching?
Yeah. So I would say if you would like kind of spot a difference between compassionate inquiry and NARM, I would say that maybe NARM is a bit more open-minded, or not open-minded, that's the wrong word, but it's like there is no kind of right or wrong method, and but with compassionate inquiry, you have very much, you go through different subjects and stuff like that. So we take the best of both worlds, but really as a method, I would say that they are, I wouldn't say that they are the same, but they are pretty much the same. Both of them is about exploring the here and now. It's not about going into stories and trying to make a narrative of what, a story. I lived through this, and then you spend an entire hour talking about that episode. But rather, it's about getting to like an open heart in the now, and planting a seed of thinking a bit differently in the now, and then the childhood stuff will take on a different meaning, basically.
Wow, that sounds absolutely amazing. I love the fact that you guys are incorporating so many different modalities and so many different experiences in the group.
Yeah.
And this, now you guys are working in your second group, because the first group has like 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in.
Yeah, 6 weeks in. We're actually starting a new group this coming Saturday. Yeah,
amazing.
So it will start in a few days, and I'm so psyched about the second group as well. And I am amazed. I mean, we just hold space and we provide the material, and then people interact together, and they make this commitment for themselves, and the commitment is such a powerful thing. So really, they have done so tremendous progress, all of them, I would say.
That's amazing. I think the key, and from what, because I haven't started my program yet, but I've spoken to so many people now because I'm like recruiting for my program, is when people reach out to you, they're ready to make the next step. They're not here just to vent. If you want to vent, you can join the Facebook groups. I think that's a huge thing in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. They have so much
and
anger.
It's important, right?
Absolutely. There's like, I was telling you beforehand, there was a time after I got disfellowshipped and the elders said I wasn't allowed to come back in. I wanted to bomb the fucking Kingdom Hall. Like, it's just there's the anger has a purpose. Let's do it. Give everyone mushrooms, like I was talking to you about earlier. Make little candies. I'm gonna get everyone to wake up. It's my mission.
If you do it though, I mean, I will cut my hair and I will use one of my suits that I've saved, and I want to be there with you. We can even pose as a couple if you want.
Oh, I fucking love that, Andreas. I will come with a bag of gummy mushrooms. I will grind my mushrooms up into powder, give them to everyone in the congregation. This is a fantastic idea. I make a separate little gummy candy for the kids so they can have that. Fucking amazing. Travel Sweden, travel the US. We will be we can be a missionary couple. Like, this is fantastic. Why did I think about this? Perfect. We're gonna be waking up people left, right, all over the place. I fucking love this idea. I think, if people are wanting to wake up, it's a matter of time. Everyone has a time and a place. If we're not meant to, if we don't want to wake up, we won't wake up. If we want to stay in that, then we can say it is a choice. It's a choice to stay angry after 20 years, because there's definitely those people in the Facebook groups and in Reddit. There's even more bullies on Reddit.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's a sad world.
But
what were you gonna say?
I would say that if I could sift through my, all years of therapy and all years of trauma work, which I believe is kind of different than therapy because it comes more from the body. It's more like an embodied way of doing psychotherapy. If I could, get one gem out of the box, I would say that as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, we were always told to better ourselves. So as long as you are doing personal improvement from that kind of standpoint, you won't be able to move past that kind of the barrier.
Mm.
So what I discovered with trauma therapy was about when you're you're kind of pulled into the rabbit hole, if you know what I mean. That's like you're pulled into the emotion. And the reason why you are pulled into an emotion is because you have an identification with that emotion. Mm. But then if you can have one part of yourself can be in the present reality, and it's like, okay, so I notice, one part of me notice that I'm being pulled in, then you have kind of a neutral standpoint or an adult self to actually hold that emotion from. So then it's not about bettering yourself, trying to improve yourself, but then it's about, holding that child within, and really show that child real compassion. Mm. And then the healing can take place, and you can find your really authentic self, I would say.
It starts with compassion, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more, which is something we emotions were lacked totally in the Jehovah's Witness world. So yeah. Wow, I resonate with you so much, Andreas. I'm a little bit jealous because you have all the wonderful people in Sweden. I miss being in Sweden and all the amazing people. Although it's dark, I would not change my environment for being there right now. But yeah. I'm so grateful that we met, and I'm so fortunate that our paths cross at this time in my life, in your life. The community of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are seeking people like you and I to help them, because there's not enough therapists and coaches and counselors and somatic based experience workers that are in the ex-Jehovah's Witness space. Yeah. So I'm so grateful to be experiencing this life with now meeting somebody like you in this life. It makes me feel so wonderful. I'm so excited to hear the future of your project, of your program. And I know our paths are going to be crossing in the near future again. Before I come back to Sweden, we're going to have many more phone calls.
Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Thank you again so much for sharing your story, Andreas. And I love that you're in such a good place right now. And I just want to say I'm so grateful that we met. So thank you for doing this video with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Until next time, guys.